Where's your lamp for your own face?
Oh, God. Better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it already on?
Let me check. And the platform says it started. Is it on Facebook already?
I didn't get notification, so I don't know. Hold on,
Okay. I see you though. I think it should be up.
Yep, it says live. Let me see. So I found out that Zoom actually can do direct streaming to Facebook pages also.
Can. But it will just be one page. So I think we're live. So shall we start?
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. This is Alex from Strengths Alchemy and Ethan from.
Well, I'm the chill philosopher today, so I do too many things. But yes, I'm the chill philosopher.
Only today he's the true philosopher. So we're just following up on our previous video on quality conversations with youth and teenagers. So if you've managed to catch the 15-minute clip, that's where we started talking about how we could have better levels of quality with conversations with youth. So this would be useful if you were a parent stuck at home with kids, but thank God that we are in phase 2 and some of the kids are actually out of the house going to school. So some of you might have a bit of reprieve, but for the rest of us who still pretty much stuck at home with kids, again, you might find this useful. So I think I'll follow up a little bit on the previous session, and the part that really got me interested, and also our follow-up discussions, Ethan, was about levels of maturity. Right? So we spoke about, as we talk about people growing up, it's not just about the age, but also the emotional maturity and things like that. And oftentimes, we do get frustrated even at work, right? We work with maybe a young adult or God forbid, older person who doesn't seem to have grown up. We come back to the idea that, hey, look, it's not so much about age, but it's a lot more about the internal state, right, of how much you've grown up internally. So a phrase came to mind, right? So one of a pastor said this before, and it stuck with me. He said that what is it? Growing old is mandatory. Growing up is not. So you can grow old without growing up. And
I love that.
Interesting thing in our head. So Ethan, anything to add on this topic before I start sharing screen to ask you about some models?
Oh no, I would love that. So I would, if you can give me sharing screen later on, I also can share some.
Okay.
Yeah, but I love it because people assume that growing older means you're wiser, and wisdom is something that I think sadly some people have monopoly over. And the thing about this, it comes together with the concept between wisdom and knowledge, right? Wisdom is after you have experienced it, after you've utilized it, you know the different contexts you can use it in before it becomes wisdom. And wisdom is the hallmark of emotional maturity or maturity in general, right? So when we talk about it, when we say a person is wise, we're also describing the person as mature, right? We're not saying that the person is a kid, So maturity always also comes with the concept of, age and growing older. So I just want to hold it to the point where a lot of people in midlife crisis go through their version of teenagehood again, right? So they act like teenagers again. There are stories of, how they become predators in relationship field, or they become the classic story of buying a sports car when you're in your 40s as a guy, so that you can prove that you have some manliness. Or for women, it might be a different thing, emptiness syndrome, where you start looking for new hobbies, new interests, and it's almost like a reinvigoration process. How you handle your midlife crisis. Actually, this is actually one of the key reasons why I was even interested in psychology, because I was seeing so many people going through midlife crisis as a teenager, because I was seeing it in teachers, I was seeing it in adults around me, that I was really then curious what it meant to be mature. Because if your midlife crisis behavior looks like a teenager, right? Like, what does it mean to be mature? Like your 40s, but you act like, as childish as I do, right? And that was a huge bunch of question marks for me. And that's when I really went further into the concept of emotional maturity, and that's why I love this topic so much.
And so while we're even talking about conversations with youth and teenagers, if we are addressing the topic of emotional maturity, this may even be relevant to, I don't know, pseudo teenagers in the workplace, right? Where people who are, well, not necessarily teenagers by age, but maybe by behavior or emotional maturity.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I can agree with you on that, because I think that realization and clarity that somebody might be going through a form of teenagehood is super important, because you will handle an adult differently from a teenager.
Yep.
Right? There's no better way of describing this than like it is. When you deal with an adult, you expect adult conversation. So in transaction analysis, we talked about, we talked about it last time, where in one of our conversations where I was talking about transaction analysis, right? If you're dealing with an adult, you speak about logic and reason and you give evidence. But when you speak to a child, very often you have to be a nurturing parent in order for this to work out well. You need to be a little bit firmer, a little bit kinder, to be able to get the message across. You cannot just give evidence. And if you want to talk about people who are resistant to knowledge or resistant to adult conversations, chances are they might be teenagers.
I'm just taking down a couple of notes as you talk, so we can add on later.
No worries, yeah, all good.
And I'm using my favorite app, or kind of favorite app.
Mural?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think, so let me just continue a little bit further down as you're taking more notes, right? So I think in my personal experience and in my own personal struggles, an interesting topic came up recently. So I was having a friend who reintroduced the concept of masculinity and femininity with me. And also how you treat, feminine characters, feminine, not necessarily women, but feminine characters versus masculine characters is also very different. So, and how they presented teenagehood is also very different. But, I think in order for us to really have this conversation, we need to start with what are the hallmarks of teenagehood. Right? But a lot of people talk about teenagehood as like just rebellious. Is that really true? Is that the most important thing?
And in fact, that's what we spoke about during the video, right? You mentioned that
Yes.
Teenagers are at the stage of individuating.
Yes.
Very interesting word. So I went online to start looking at levels of maturity, right? Yeah, individualization. But that's different, right? So that's the time thing. So I went online to search for different models. Let me try to see. You see my screen?
Now, yes, I see your mural.
Okay.
And I see your restream.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure if I can.
Oh, I love this. This is actually using Piaget. No, this is probably Erikson.
Yeah, I think that's Erikson. So I went online to search for different levels of maturity. So you see on the other side of the screen, emotional levels. We'll get to that later. So I went to search and look at what are the different levels of maturity. So if you're a parent, you probably see a good portion of this psychological stages of development in your kid. For us, if we think back for ourselves, whether or not we have actually gone through each of this stage. So you mentioned individuating, right, for teenagers, and I see that here the age range is 25 to 39. So actually we could be individuating all the way to our 40, to our 30s. Or
I find it interesting because this is using Erikson's model, but not using Erikson's ages.
Oh, okay. I found this online, so feel free to correct it.
Oh no, it's not. It's all good. So I think as you're sharing this, I will also pull up the Piaget, the Erikson model, Erikson's stages of psychosocial development.
Okay, if you want to link to this, you can.
Yeah, I would just like to, let me just pull up because I actually created an overall structure around this before. I created my human condition model because I realized that we needed to be super clear on this. I'm just gonna, yeah, but I wouldn't want to correct it. I would argue that it might be actually more accurate to current day behavior. But if you were in the early days of psychology, I mean, not psychology, if you were the early days of society and not the current day, you will actually function very differently.
Okay, so are you saying this is accurate for current day, or this is not accurate for current day?
This is, I don't find it very accurate for current day.
Okay, so the ages are probably different, right? You're saying
yeah. So in Erikson's model, let me just let me see how I can put. I think I'll just screenshot this over. Hold on. Okay. So I think a lot of realizations. Oh yeah, model of hierarchical complexity. I see you have brought it in.
Yeah, I have. We're going to reach that later. So do you want to put yours?
Yeah. I just put it in link.
Okay,
so this Erikson's model. Let me pull up Piaget's model as well. So they say different things.
okay, but this is different, right?
Yeah. So that's the interesting thing, right? It's actually talking about the same thing, but in different ways. To me, they're all the same. Okay. Like knowing what I know today, I would say they're all the same to me.
Okay, we're missing the header for this, right?
Give me a second. Am I missing the header? Yes, we're missing the header. Yes. Yeah. Give me a second. Let me go back and try to capture everything then. I need to do a full screen, so hold on.
No problem.
So so I think for me, it goes back to the fact that in a lot of these models, and so I particularly love using these models as a good reference point, because then you relate it back to emotional maturity. Like what are the traits of emotional maturity, and what are the things that is happening in people's minds. And it's only served to help me realize that most people are so immature that it doesn't. It's because of our environment.
Yeah. Yep. So maybe you can. Okay. So maybe you can run through this with us, so that at least we have understanding of the levels of maturity.
Okay. Let me go see
psychological maturity, and what does it mean then as we relate to people with different levels of maturity.
Let me just delete this and move this up, because the stages are here.
In particular.
Okay, so I go back to even Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So I relate all of this back. So if you notice, there's 7 levels. There, if you know Maslow's hierarchy, people think it's 5. He actually has a next level called 6-1, which, okay, so most people's model of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually created after he has died. Your triangle, your pyramid, was created after, not by Maslow. Maslow wrote an article about it. He didn't draw a pyramid around it. And if you read his articles, his book, he didn't really talk so much in that form. He actually just talked about what the needs that's needed. But if you look at it, right, I'll go back to, well, let me just, I'll join you on this platform. Let me just see whether I cannot doodle on your Zoom. Okay, let me just go on this platform, and
you can doodle on Miro.
I can doodle on Miro, right? Can you see my mouse?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so when we talk about trust versus mistrust, right? Can I trust your word? Can I trust the world? Can I trust? So feeding and an abandonment is a survival thing. So if you look at physiological needs or biological needs, or I call it biological needs, there is a clear need for people to feel safe, that they can survive, that they're provided for. Does it make sense?
Yep. I'm just going to add the word survival there.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is that, right? Then you see 2 to 4. So this is when you start toilet training, you start clothing yourself, you start eating with your own hands and everything. So before that, you're usually fed. Your parents usually give you the food. What happens is that so you are dependent in this phase, in the survival phase, and you start taking charge of survival at this phase.
Okay, so it's still survival phase.
Okay, let me explain a bit more. So there's this interesting thing. It is where you have security, right? Okay, I also
Okay.
call it. And now I'm using the Office Matters own versions. Okay, so security is where safety, right? Or safety. Actually, let's just replace it with safety. Sorry, it's easier to say. So, is it okay to be me? Am I safe enough to be a person myself? Am I valid as a person?
Mm.
Meanwhile, I'm fighting for survival by eating myself. I not eating myself, but eating by my own hands and holding forks and spoons and trying to grasp around things to survive on my own.
This is like
But
self-efficacy, right?
yes, and survival is part of self-efficacy, right? I mean, self-efficacy is part of survival. Sorry, and can I feed myself? So you start owning your survival habits,
Mm.
but you're also building up safety by looking at your parents and go, is it okay for me to do this? Are you gonna abandon me? Are you gonna not give me what I need if I were to do this? So it's a lot of safety mechanisms as to am I valid to be me?
Mm. And that's also the age where children are learning to exert their, that's why it says will, right? Learn to exert
Yes.
their will. The favorite word of 2-year-old is no.
Yes.
Favorite word.
So they are trying to learn how to build boundaries. That's what safety is, right?
Mm.
I mean, now we have Henry Cloud, we talk about regularly, and
Yes, we do.
and boundaries is actually something that we should be learning at 2 years old.
But it's also, they learn it from the parents, right?
They have to
So
learn
the
to say
parents
no
are,
to their parents.
uh,
It goes both ways. They learn to
yeah.
imitate their parents. They also learn to say no to their parents.
Yeah. So typically, if parents do not have healthy boundaries or good boundaries, the children start picking up.
Yes. And then you go to the next level where we talk about social, right? Social needs. Is it okay for me to move, do, and act? So am I gonna be recognized as a valuable person if I was to still do this?
Mm.
Meanwhile, they're also in the process of owning their own safety, their own boundaries. So this is 5 to 8 years. I mean, in Piaget's model, it's 4 to 7. It's these are the question marks, right? Like where exactly do you draw the line? But it's around the age because 7 years old. Okay, 7 years old is when neurologically you have developed the frontal cortex, your front brain, your forebrain, which is where the executive thinking and individual thinking and your ego and your self-awareness starts. Is at 7 years old. So
Yeah,
there's
so
a lot.
that's the starting part, the starting development, right? That's
Yes.
when they start to exert a little bit of self-control.
Yes, and
Right?
self-inhibition,
Yeah, but it either doesn't really get fully developed until say 20-ish, right?
The real development really starts at puberty.
Yeah, but it doesn't complete its development until past 20. So I was reading a book about the teenage brain and how it's starting to develop and why there's this the lack of impulse control because the frontal lobes are still developing. And in fact, it's probably around 5 to 7 where the frontal lobe starts developing. That if you did the delaying of gratification tests, you find that it's a lot. Was it delaying of gratification?
Yeah, delayed gratification test. So like if you wait for the marshmallow, you'll get 2.
Yeah. I think that was one. And the other one was about empathy, right? So it's the development of the front lobe that allows people to relate better with one another and also to have more self-control in the marshmallow test.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's the front lobe thing, right?
Frontal lobe, yes. Frontal lobe is your inhibition. So majority of people, if you are feeling depressed, frontal lobe is actually creating a lot of inhibition in that area. So there's a lot of different mechanisms in which this works. So inhibition comes in many forms, but one of the major things is frontal lobe. And it requires willpower.
So I think while we're talking about conversations with youths and teenagers, then we also recognize that even though we talk about emotional maturity, right? So you could have the teenager-like adult versus the teenager. The difference is the level of development of their frontal lobes, right? So a teenager adult would probably have more capacity for self-control than the teenager, which biologically speaking or neurologically speaking, actually has less inhibition because of the frontal lobe development.
Probably right, but the interesting part about this is that because, okay, if you understand habits and traumas, you know that the teenager adult would actually be a lot worse because they're probably further down the line in terms of re-traumatization. So like they are probably more traumatized than the teenager because the teenager has less years of traumas. Like a teenager adult would be in their 40s and they have double the lifespan of a typical teenager minimally. And they might actually end up exhibiting a lot of traits of behaviors that's way more immature than a teenager.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so maybe let's move on to complete the rest of this model.
Yeah. So let me go further into this, right? So at this phase, the 5 to 8, right? The 4 to 7, 5 to 8, it's when they also start taking control over their safety. So they start becoming aware of fire and danger and things like that. They start being more aware. So that's why actually there's a UK practice that I found really interesting was that they allow kids between 4 to 7 to play in a playground where anything goes. There's sharp objects, there's fire, there's all this kind of different things.
Yes, Sweden. Was it Sweden?
No, it started in UK. Sweden also has that, but Sweden is a different, it's also partly also because of the, like allowing the different transgender, all these kind of different things to explore and everything in the same space. So at 4 to 7, they started like kindergarten schools, kids, right? Kindergarten. They actually got kids to, like, they get to play with anything they want. So it's complete freedom of experimentation, and there's been no accidents. They have an adult watching from outside, but the kids have complete freedom within the space. What happens is that when kids know that something is dangerous because of experience, they know how to avoid it, or they know how to be smart around it. But if I've never handled a knife before until I'm like 12, 13 years old, I'm going to be a lot more careless with it than I was a 4, 5-year-old kid. I might cut myself and nick myself a little bit in a 4, 5-year-old kid, but as an adult or a teenager, I might actually, end up doing stupid things with it because I really had no experience and had no tactile pre-experience with a knife. So it was very interesting when they were talking about that because it was to create resilient and experimental adults.
Okay.
Yeah, and creativity comes also from that space. So this is when they start looking at safety and start looking at what is safe, what's not safe. And that's I think, to me, a really important part of personal development and maturity, right? So that's where I recognize this to be at. Then we go to the next phase, right, which is competence. So when we talk about competence, right, and so existential need, who am I? What am I? What is my value in this world? Can I make it in this world of things? What's my value? Right? So if you look at, you have the industry versus inferiority complex, you have your, can I make it in the world of people and things? This is when, okay, so if you look at social as your inner tribe, that means your family as a tribe. When you go to the next level, you're expanding beyond your tribe and going into the world of multiple tribes.
Right. So
it goes back to this part where at this point, right, which is they put here 9 to 12, again in Piaget it's 7 to 11. It's interesting because their needs are very different during the time. They're supposed to gain mastery. And mastery is through education, through experimentation, through apprenticeship, through all these different means. Does it make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what happens when you're developing in this world, in this space. So if you had never gained mastery before in your life, if you never found your place in this world, you're not able to hit real emotional puberty.
Say that again?
If you've never gained a mastery in your life before, you've never hit emotional puberty.
So when you say mastery, you're referring to any form of mastery? Or?
Any form of mastery. So when we talk about mastery, right, let's be specific. It's not a skill set that is compared to other people. To be very specific, mastery is the skill set in which you are able to take as your own. So that means I own the process. I go from start to beginning. I can do from scratch to that place. So if a kid is cooking, he or she can actually create their own dish. They can be creative and they can experiment and they can think of the outcome and then go and do it. Why is that so important? That is deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is the first step into puberty in terms of emotional growth. Before that, all you have is linear thinking, which is inductive reasoning.
Yeah, I'm just thinking mastery can be at many different levels, right? So cooking could be one level of mastery. But I think if you're looking at kids, one level of mastery, I mean, it could be as simple as I know how to find my way home, right? As
that's a competence, right? There's a difference from mastery, right? Mastery is where you can create. You feel, okay. So I think another word for this is with catharsis. An ability to express your emotional ideas. So if you notice 7 to 11-year-old kids, right, are very talkative, or if they've been neutered by the family, very silent, but trying to express through other means. And it requires you to have something where you feel freedom in to express yourself.
Okay.
So this is actually when you re-own your safety concepts. What's your boundaries, right? Because then I feel safe enough for me to develop my skills. So if you talk about 7 to 11, it's a great time for them to pick up like extracurricular activities and develop their own skills in certain manners.
That would actually be like upper primary, right?
Primary to upper primary.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you go into the next phase, which is
adolescence.
Yep, adolescence, right? In Maslow's hierarchy, usually people term it as this phase will be self-actualization. Yeah, because existential is achievement and this is called self-actualization. I disagree with the term. In fact, I call it impact needs. It's what impact am I making in this world? So after I found my place in the world, I can look at what impact am I making on the ground. Who can I impact? What am I impacting? So that's why social relationships is so important during that phase. It is about me creating my own tribe. It's me being a leader. It's me impacting the environment around me.
Okay. I was thinking whether do teenagers think about that at that age, 13 to 19, the impact they're going to make in the world, or is it
in their internal sphere? In their internal sphere.
Okay.
Is that their locus of control, right? So it's within my limited scope. What can I impact? What impact am I leaving in this world? This is when teenagers are the most outspoken about world issues. They think they know everything.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right? Why? Because they think they can make an impact. Okay. Why do they become rebellious? This is also when the individuation element. So individuation element comes from the existential needs. I need to own my body. I need to own my own mastery. I need to own my own skills.
Are you going to tie this back to the other model on psychological levels of maturity?
Yes, I'm happy to do so in a short bit.
Okay.
Right. So after that, I call it universal needs. After impact needs, So universality. I call it universality because you start looking at how can I create my social circles such that I impact different areas with different goals. What is universal around all these concepts?
Okay.
Yep. So that's when you hit all these different developments. When you know your hypothesis, so hypothetical deductive reasoning, which is also known as scientific methods, right? You have a hypothesis, you test it, right? That is only available at 20 to 39 years old. Full on. So if you're talking about adult reasoning, right, that's literally where it is. When you can talk about broad principles, you can do Socratic dialogues, you can talk about advanced concepts in such a manner that allows you to be able to go, okay, if this is the hypothesis, that is the hypothesis, here are all the different factors in place, what's the empirical evidence, and what are the patterns within this that I can find?
Yep. So this actually ties back to the model of hierarchical
complexities,
right?
Yes.
So
and then we when you talk about care and wisdom, those are the next levels of you're talking about meta systems, meta ecosystems, and all these kind of different things.
In fact, we can start drawing. Let's connect them later, right? You can draw lines.
Yeah. Let's go back up to the psychological development. Right? So if you look at this, right, surviving, first 2 years, same thing. It's all about survival. Conforming is all about feeling safe and protected by staying close to your kin and family.
Right.
Okay, feeling respected. This is social needs.
Okay.
Right? Discovering your
Goes
true
all the way to
identity.
24. Okay,
Yes.
there's all the age range are different, but the stages are pretty much the same.
Yeah, individuating, same. Self-actualization, same. Integrating, connecting with unconditional love. This is impact already.
Okay.
This is impact. This is existential. This is universality, connecting with others, unconditional loving relationships to make a difference.
Okay. I'm just going to do this.
Yeah, so actually this is my model of human condition. The human condition. So it starts from here.
Oops. I wanted to
Copy and paste.
Yeah. Let me see. This is what happens when I change the laptop.
I guess you're no longer using a Mac now.
No, I wanted my Mac. Okay, so if I'm going to take this.
Yep, do it the other way around.
And it would be
survival. See, surviving, conforming, yes.
Safety.
Yep. Differentiating, social needs.
Social.
Existential? Yes, correct. Individuation.
Impact?
Yep.
Universality is...
Yes. Yeah, connecting with others. Because universal love, universal concepts, what is good, what is not good, what is, yeah.
So what's serving?
Serving is another, I forgot the name for it. Enlightenment, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Not in the spiritual sense, right?
You can say it in multiple ways. It's where you have really gotten what you want from reality, and you started recognizing how to give.
Okay.
Which is why universality is a very major first step before you can get there. You need to know what's universal.
Okay, interesting. So we start to look around, and we know that most teenagers probably at the individuating, maybe even differentiating.
Yeah. So yes, I think this is more accurate to current day people's behaviors.
Right. So
Erikson's model is more accurate to so Erikson, 1950s.
So teenagers today would probably be, where would you place it?
Teenagers today would be differentiating, maximum.
Oh, not even individuating.
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, so another part about letting go of your fears and your dependence on others. Okay, so if you talk about Asia, confirm plus double shot, teenagers are not doing this.
Okay, so this is where teenagers are.
Yeah.
Teenagers. Okay, I'm going to clean this up a little bit next time, I guess. But yeah, okay. So teenagers are probably around differentiating stage, which makes sense, right? 8 to 24.
Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
And if you're looking back at your model, then that is actually differentiating its existential. Yeah.
No, differentiating is actually social. Wait, existential?
Haha, see? Confused.
No, I'm a little bit confused by this. Wait, let me just see. Yeah, differential, yes, existential. Sorry.
Yeah, but not not impact?
No, they think they want to be impacting, but the thing is that that's their way of identifying themselves. It's actually, wait, look, that's what it is. Wait, in this model, it is social. Differentiating is actually social.
So I guess the way I see it, teenagers probably cover this too.
Yeah, they do cover both fields. Let me see. Differentiating, social. I think it's really interesting, right? Because feeling recognized and respected by establishing yourself in a community that values who you are is mastery. Wait, no, wait. I'm just trying to read this a bit more because see, all the terms all like start mixing up. Hold on. I wouldn't put it as impact, because a lot of them are not different. Okay, at least what I see of teenagers today, they're still financially dependent on parents.
Yeah, but they are actually trying to identify to individuate, right?
Yeah, they're trying
find
to.
their own identity.
But okay, so I would say that majority will never succeed.
No, I mean, for some people, it goes well into their early adulthood, right?
So I think the interesting part is that so there's a differentiation between what is external and what's internal.
Okay.
So I might be able to say that I individuate in terms of physical realities, meaning I'm starting to work, I'm starting to earn my own money, but in my mind, I'm still captive to certain things. But that's too complicated to talk about also.
So let's make it simple. I think that I guess even in Singapore, most of us probably still collecting pocket money till we graduate from university.
University,
right?
yep.
So that's actually well into 20s.
Yep.
Or at least early 20s, right?
Yep. If you notice, right, a lot of the teenagers are like, entrepreneurship is super popular with teenagers. Make an impact on the world. They're okay. If you're talking about aspiring, yes. In terms of satisfying, no.
Yeah, but that's where they start off, right? Because many people, once they grow, they're seeking, which is actually a good thing, because most people, as they get older, they get disillusioned, and that's why you don't get much new stuff coming up.
So that's the interesting part, right? So I think because they've been dissatisfied for such a long time, therefore they get jaded.
Yeah, fair enough.
So they give up on their needs. And another thing is that, okay, so I want to go into this, right? So if you notice, most people get triggered as if their life is on danger, even at work. Right? Okay, so like you argue with them about whether they were right or wrong about a decision, right? That they almost go into survival mode.
Right.
They haven't satisfied their own survival needs. They don't know what they need to survive. They have no clarity. They have no consciousness over it. So they had no means of providing their own survival. The other thing about it is safety. A lot of people also don't have any safety, meaning that they don't know where. Okay, so safety in the old days, right, was about just how do you maintain your survival for the long run. So in the old days, you're talking about having warriors that protect the tribe, having fences that is built around, having a house to protect against the elements, having certain things that maintain the hygiene of the place so that you don't die of health diseases. That's safety.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the existential question, some people grow up not feeling it's okay for them to be themselves till could be a very old age. So
and then you get stuck there. So you get stuck there even as you're trying to individuate as a teenager, you will still be stuck back at safety.
So is it a prerequisite to satisfy the earlier stages?
To be able to function. So my favorite way of describing this, I remember this wonderful story that somebody told me about. So there's this guy banker, right? He likes to take MRT all the time. He doesn't care to take a Bentley or like to buy a car, right? But then one day he decided that he's gonna buy an expensive car. So he bought a Bentley. He sold it within a year. He was not enamored with the idea of owning a Bentley. He bought the Bentley just to show people that he's successful in his career so that more people will buy from him. So that's effectively using a tool which is luxury based, which is an impact or like existential need level, like they talk about achievement level or whatever, right? To use something like this for the furtherment of your career or whatever, he sold it right away and he went back to taking MRT afterwards, right? So I left that story because if you look at a lot of people who are buying cars or sports cars or high-end vehicles to showcase their existential, like, I am me, look at me. That's a teenager behavior, right? It's because they haven't satisfied it yet. You're borrowing an external thing to try to satisfy an internal thing. So a lot of people, when you talk about teenager adults, the reason why they go through midlife crisis is because those needs are not settled or not satisfied, and therefore they do that. But also one of the reasons why they feel that is because they feel like if I focus on these things, which is thanks to the education that we have today, if I go further into this and I go backwards, right? Like they still have survival need issues every single day. They can't even feed themselves. They overspend money. They don't even know where the survival for the next day might come from, but they will still buy a very expensive car. They might not ever feel safe because they don't trust anybody at work. They don't have any people who give them space. On social level, they might think that everybody, they don't have a tribe that they belong to. They don't have a space where they feel like they belong. But so what happens that you would crave to satisfy this, but you cannot actually satisfy it because the rest are not satisfied. Does it make sense? In order for you to satisfy your higher level needs, you need to satisfy your lower level needs before you can satisfy your higher level needs.
So when you say satisfy, it's not like a digital thing, right? It's also like a scale. It's not like you either satisfied or not satisfied, right? You could have it satisfied to a certain degree, good enough for you to move on.
Okay, so I would say it's environmental. That means the stability of the current space. So like in Singapore at this time, because I live in a home, I have this, I have this, I have this, those are settled. I don't have to worry about that. I am satisfied. Those people who have those things and still never feel satisfied is a psychological thing. So it's not about external satisfaction. It's about internal satisfaction of current status.
Yeah, so everything here is internal anyway, right?
Yeah, everything
There's
here is
a link to the external. It's how they assess the external in terms.
Yeah, but if I lose everything today, I need to restart from bottom up and build it up again in my external environment. But like if I were to be in the middle of, if I was one block away from a protest right now in the US and people are shooting tear gas.
Yeah, you probably be at survival safety, right?
Yeah. Unless I already boarded up my walls, make sure that everything is perfectly fine, locked it up properly, or I'm in the protest itself and I don't care about my survival because I know I can survive regardless. Or even if I die, at least I'm fighting for the right cause. That's a different story altogether. It depends on your mentality and your environment and as to whether you want to survive, whether you care about survival, and all these kind of different things. So it is a mixture of environment and internal, right? So if you're happy with the external, meaning, right, if I was a Swami in India and I was a Hindu priest or a form of Hindu kind of holy man, I can live on no money and just beg for food. And I'm fine. It's not about external. It's about the internals mixed with the external.
I mean, there's definitely an overlap between the internal and external, right? Because that kind of feeds into each other. So if we come back to the conversation about how do we then relate or have conversations with teenagers and youths, knowing that this is probably the level of psychological maturity that they are at, how does that help us in that conversation, right? So what should we focus on? Are there things that we should avoid? Or how does this help us?
I go back to what are their worries and what are their fears. Because let's be frank here, right? Teenage time is a terrible time. It's your body is changing. For girls, guys start looking at you differently. Guys, like you start having people talking about sex. You start hearing people talk about all these different things that you're not experiencing when you're in childhood. Yeah, you're going into very new feelings. You have hormonal changes. you're going to feel insecure. You're going to have to rebuild everything from ground up again. Then my next question is, are you worried about survival? If the person's family has issues even surviving, right? The teenager would always worry about, do I even have the meal for the next day? Would they look for a girlfriend or boyfriend? What would they be focusing on during the time? So it goes back to this, right? So, but when they're individuating, they'll be going to try to find a way to have their individual way of solving these problems or satisfying themselves. So rather than being a dependent, they are going to try to find a way to fight themselves out of it. Which is why teenagehood is usually when people join gangs to find a new home. Which is why people find, so a lot of people after secondary school, you know, like in Singapore, still friends with their secondary school classmates.
Okay.
Because they still relate. You know what I mean? That's the era of relating. That's the era where they spend time finding their own belonging.
Okay. I mean, some of us relate to people from different stages of life, right?
I'm saying this on the grounds of, because, okay, so the other part, I mean, there's another portion of this, which is, if you notice, the people who meet their ex-classmates, right? If they start behaving like they were back in secondary school.
I'm not sure we behave.
No, maybe not you. A lot of people do. There's this frat boy syndrome, right? Like, no matter how far you are from being a frat boy, you know, once you're a frat boy, once you meet your frat boy friends, you're gonna go back to the same dynamics again.
Yeah, I guess because, I mean, there are certain triggers, right, that brings us back. It's almost like age regression. You start joking about things that were, but I think it's like revisiting something again for the first time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of see things, but with different eyes, more maturity, more experience. But, you know, I just caught up with a secondary school friend I've not spoken for in like decades, right? Maybe like 20 odd years. And we started talking about people that we knew, joking about how we had a fellow classmate who used to make fun of the teachers. He would be made to carry it's probably considered abuse in our age now. I don't know. So he was made to carry a waste paper basket at the corner, squat down with the waste paper basket over his head.
Small
and
thing.
then it was hilarious, right? Everyone was laughing. Then he would put the waste paper basket down. He would go to the teacher and "Chu ni la." Then it was like the rest of us would just be like watching a show and being entertained, comic relief.
Okay. So, notice the way you're speaking right now. Okay, so notice the way you're speaking right now. I'm noticing a change in the way you speak.
Yeah, because it was amusing, right? It's kind of like, it brings back.
Not only that, your speaking mannerisms changed compared to the usual Alex that I know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I guess in some sense, when you start talking about memory and you relive it, that's kind of part of it, right?
That's how a lot of people have their relationships.
So I mean, it helps to bring back to that space to connect to people with that relationship.
Yes.
But okay, so probably that brings back to another topic, right? Maybe if we speak to youth and teenagers, does it help to then relate with your teenager times with the teenager, or your youth time with the youth? Or is it counterproductive? Because I also read a lot where teenagers or even youths get very frustrated and say that, look, your time and my time was totally different, right? So you can't possibly empathize with what I'm going through because, you know, this is generation gap and everything. So
it's about how you do it, right? It's not about what you do.
Okay. Tell me more.
I can talk. Okay, I've talked to a number of viewers because you know, I used to teach and everything. And one of my favorite things about talking to them is that I tell them about my time, and I'm very different from them. Like, I tell them straight up, I'm different from you, but I know some of the things that are going through my head is that your experience. Versus, I know what you've been through. I've been through it too. Please listen to me. There's a lot of difference.
One is more validating than the other.
It's about whether it's like, yes, I've experienced something similar, but not the same. Your experience is different. you're individuating. You want your own space and you want to say this is yours. If I were to intrude and say, I know better than you do, what does it mean?
My experience is valid and yours is not.
There's a difference. So it doesn't matter what you do. It's the same as like, oh, your son or your nephew or your teenager goes to army. It's like going, no, army days are supposed to be like this. You should be doing this, you should be doing that. That's a different thing of relating versus, during my army days, it was so different. But I'm quite curious. Like I hated confinement. How do you feel about it?
So I guess it's about, we talked about the individuating phase for them, right? So it's important to then help them to individuate, allow them to be their own individual rather than imposing your experience on them, which is probably what frustrates them. I speak to youth quite a bit, and a number of them are actually in army right now. And I've had mentees who have completed army. I thought it was very interesting because our experience totally different.
Drastically different, right?
Yeah. So I'm like you, I didn't like army at all. I had some friends who were crazy over army. It's like, hey, free war games kind of thing, right? Let's go play paintball or something like that. So some of them it's like that. But I think army has changed quite a bit, whereby now they talk about promoting thinking soldiers. It's like more chill and people are actually more motivated in army right now, right?
Really?
More space.
I'm not in touch, so I don't know.
Yeah, good number of them that I've been in contact with seem to be quite enthused. I mean, there are definitely still frustrations and whatnot, but some of them were given space to grow. Some of them started to take on more leadership roles that they may not have taken pre-army. Some of them who became officers became more N2. I don't know whether it was because they were N2 and they became officers, or they became officers, therefore they were N2. So, but either way, a good number of them seems to be fairly happy, right? I mean, there were frustrations and all this, but that's part and parcel of army and life. But compared to how I saw during my days, it seems vastly different. So it's difficult for me to go and relate to them and say, hey, look, this, I could share what my experience was in army, but it's entirely different. The other thing that even if I tried to relate or even explain what some of the things that I went through, it's difficult, right? Because while largely it's the same, if we went down the specifics, even the SOC standard obstacle course is different from our day now, right? We go like, oh, I did this, like, well, what is it that you did again? You were going through some, I don't know what is that concrete pipe thing, right? Or
I don't know the names. Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, it's like entirely different. So we can't entirely relate to their experiences in army because it's so different. But I guess we could just share our stories, let them know how it was during our time, and allow them to share their stories.
I think the resonance is best when you talk about your feelings about what happened. Like SOC was really tough. We bonded over that. Those are the common things that might happen.
Right. And maybe even the fear of, certain obstacles where you couldn't clear it. So the emotional aspects could be a good point for resonance, right?
Yeah, and or like, kena tekan, like my sergeants are always, they like to tekan everybody. Like we just chant one bit wrongly, everybody down. Those kind of things. Like those, like you can compare and contrast and go like, that's my experience. What's yours? So instead of it being an intrusive thing, right? It becomes you are valid. I see you as a peer. Oh yes, that's actually very important. For teenagers, they will refuse to be seen as inferior to you. I'm differentiating, I'm individuating, I'm a valid human being. Stop looking down on me because my parents have done so for the last 18 years of my life.
You're talking about this in relation to their peers?
Not as a person who's talking to a teenager.
Right. But does it make a difference whether you're the parent?
Oh, it makes a whole lot of difference. So if you practice right, so I've seen parents who did a very good job on the upbringing, on a psychological level, on what are psychological practices, right? They've always encouraged the kid. They allow the kid to fail. They focus on what matters for the kid. in that manner, and they have friendships with their child. So they will stay out of the way and they will not get too much information from the child. Why? Because they're still seen as authority figure and the child is going against them, no matter what. As a parent, it is normal to rebel. It is because you are used as the reference point in their life. You need to be the thing they're rebelling against in order for it to work for them.
Okay. So, difference between if you were an older adult speaking to a teenager, whereby you then relate to them, create resonance by helping them to individuate, right? Validating the experience, letting them tell their story, versus if you were the parent of a teenager, whereby they need to literally rebel, quote unquote, against you so that they can individuate.
Yes.
So therefore, for a parent figure, it's probably better to just leave them be, don't ask questions.
Oh, no. So create space for them to come to you for advice and come to, okay, so one of my favorite stories goes back to like this father who brought his daughter out to drink. Right? Then he drank, the two of them drank until like she blacked out and she brought her home safe. And he told her, now you know your limit. Feel free to explore, but know your limits. And then in another same breath, and there's another story of another father who told his daughter that, the mother told her daughter, if you call me and you message me this word at night, I will go wherever you are, pick you up, bring you back home, and not say a single word of what has happened, and it will not be in my memory. I just want you to be safe. So if there's anything, you have nothing, you are not accountable to me. You live your life, you take accountability to yourself. That's called allowing the individuation to happen. They're not accountable to you, they're accountable to themselves. As a parent, that's what you need to do in order for you to be able to create that kind of relationship with your child, to be able to allow them to individuate effectively.
So it's like allowing them to do whatever they want without accountability. I mean, that's what.
And you're still there to save them. Yes. Where
doesn't sound very responsible.
And no, they're accountable to themselves. They have to make a choice. But they know that they have a safety net that's available that will not chide them or judge them. So they have to take care of their own restrictions and boundaries.
Right. Okay.
If not, they have to suffer the consequences themselves. That's how you grow a person. That's how you individuate as a person. I think one of the greatest things my parents did for me was to allow me to start my business and live away from home and just really just build myself as a person. And do or die, I had to take all the consequences. I took all the consequences of my stupidity, all my failures, and but there was also a safety net of anytime going home and having a space that I can call my home. And that was super imperative for me to grow as a person.
Okay. So I'm looking at the time now. We spent an hour talking about psychological levels of maturity. And I thought that was very interesting, right? Because we could probably go a lot deeper into understanding this model so that we can relate to people. And we look at teenagers, even though that box I've highlighted is more on existential and impact needs, right? For teenagers, and how we help them to individuate becomes the important part. And recognizing how you help them individuate as an adult that's not a parent versus adult that is a parent also becomes important, because probably a lot of parents are facing some challenges with their teens, right? At that point of time. What more when you're actually spending so much face time together in the same house and they can't go out because of COVID?
Oh, so yes, absolutely.
That kind of make everything a lot bigger, and if there are problems, they would again be expanded. So that's kind of where we are. I don't think we will have a lot more time to go through some of the other models, like the hierarchy of
No, let's
model
just
of
go through it very
hierarchical
quickly. Let's just go through it very quickly because it was just I talked a little bit about it before just now.
Sure, go ahead.
So I think if you don't allow the teenager to explore their thoughts, right? So so this model is based off Piaget's model. So it was reference of Piaget. Therefore, you have nominal, sentential, pre-operational, and primary, and concrete and abstract. So where we are in terms of teenagers is usually concrete and abstract.
Okay, so that is, yep.
They enter knowing that they're supposed to learn the formal system as they go through teenagehood.
Sorry, let me shift this.
Yep.
So that it doesn't keep moving. And we are looking at concrete to abstract.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Meanwhile, physiologically, we're trying to train them in empiricism and algebra, right? So algebra, logic, empiricism only appears in teenagehood. Only appears. So we're training them to develop those skills afterwards. So actually, I will even cover formal. Sorry, let's bring it down just a little bit more.
Including formal?
Yeah, including formal.
So it's, okay, so it's concrete, abstract, and formal.
Yep. So so form clicks, plan deals. These are the things that are like the hustling mentality. Discriminate variables such as stereotypes, logical quantification. Some people, all people, da 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 da. So this is when like the overgeneralization or calling out people. So again, teenagers are very opinionated in most cultures, right? So they talk as if they know everything. And it's a very understandable thing because they're only learning to learn how to generalize. And so they will find the patterns and they'll do all of that. And it's understandable.
And the moment you say that, the thought came to my mind, right? Recently, I saw a news article saying that over 50% of the rioters in Hong Kong are students.
Yeah.
So that falls squarely in this category, right?
Yes. So yeah, and the reason being that they are okay. So rather than creating dialogues, right? Rather than creating dialogues and conversations around things, they rather take a little bit more violent stance. You're talking about rioters, right? Not protesters, right?
Interesting.
There's a difference, huh? The ones who throw the petrol bombs, all these kind of things are rioters. The ones who are protesting are the peaceful protesters. So especially today, right? Like with Black Lives Matters and everything happening, it's very important to differentiate the two.
Might be protesters. I think protesters probably
50% of protesters, right? But the thing is that so teenagers also have more wish for change because their futures are at stake. And so if you're looking at the situation, right? So with Hong Kong, it is a wish for independence. Look, let's put it here, right? Ironically, they're asking for UK to take over. But they felt that they had more freedoms then.
That actually brings us back to here, right?
Yes.
Right? That brings us back to the... Are you seeing my screen?
Yeah. I'm seeing.
Yeah, that brings us back to the confidence, fidelity, or the impact and existential part of that model, right? Whatever you just described.
That's why they say youths are immensely powerful in any society. They're the ones usually pushing for change.
Yeah, and got the impact part, right?
Yes, and because that's what they're most focused on. Once you go into workforce, you're just focusing on trying to survive with your family.
And then you start trying to survive with office politics, which is your pet topic.
Yes. So yeah, if you look at all these kind of things, right? Like so, in your operational stages, right? So then you start looking at stereotypes. You start being more vocal about, discrimination, all these different things.
I'm going to bring you back to the screen.
Can.
So we are back at concrete, abstract, and formal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so they are starting, if you notice, right, that relationships, for example, causality are form variables, they're linear, logical, one-dimensional, and therefore they are a little bit less complex than what happens afterwards. So if you notice just below 12, right, just below the formal is systematic, where you start looking at systems thinking. You start looking at multiple variables. You start looking at how all these different things comes in. This is when empathy really comes into the picture. You can only have empathy after you develop a systematic way of thinking.
So I think we spoke about this earlier, right? That probably when you're younger, I think your term you use of splitting, I use the term compartmentalize, right?
Yes.
So they're probably behave in a particular way at home versus a particular way with different cliques even, right? So maybe if the way they behave with their class could be different from the way they behave with a CCA group.
In NLP, they also talk about psychological fragmentation, right?
I mean, there's
this guy Nigel, the one who's talking to me about fragmentation.
Yeah, so I mean, we allude to that, but I don't think we use that term.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we say that sometimes people exhibit different.
I may remember wrongly.
Rather, they are in conflict with themselves.
Yeah, and
right?
so these identities will start creating. Yeah, so the point of teenagehood is for you to find a way to integrate the multiple identities to become a systematic thinker. So we talk about past integration, right? Yes. So yeah.
So you're just saying that if I think back to the time when I was JC, uni even, I behave differently in different ways. Of course, I alluded to my individualization talent team whereby, I adapt to different types of people that I'm in. But I guess along the way, we also need to then integrate the different ways we relate to different groups of people into something that is centrally and wholly you, right? So that's part of the integration.
Consistency and congruence. So the key part here is why universality is one of the needs, is because then you can stay congruent despite all the compartments that you are dealing with.
So what our experience with youth or teenagers then could be that they are very incongruent, right? Behaving one way sometimes and then another way in other times. So that's probably part of the compartmentalization or the...
It has to be done. It's a part of finding yourself, because every bit of self-judgment creates a new compartment. So each self-judgment creates a compartment. So for example, if I hang out with somebody that my parents disagree with, that's a compartment on its own. With my parents, one level. The people that my parents like, another compartment. People who my parents know, but they're okay with me hanging out with those other people, another compartment. People in school, one compartment. Teachers in school, another compartment.
Yep. Then you have many, many different compartments, and the way you relate with people are different.
For us, okay, both of us got individuation, right? So both of us got individuation. But
individualization.
Sorry.
Individuation is what the teenagers go through.
Yeah, individualization. Individualization is so individuation is finding your identity and your own self.
Right.
Individualization is the ability to systematically adjust to each different individual, right?
To understand and appreciate what makes people think the way they think, what makes them different and unique.
In strengths, right? If it's a basement level, that means you're inconsistent and you're very confused. If you're at your strengths level and you're using it well, it means that you're able to adapt but stay consistent. In my opinion, this is my proposal of what it could look like.
Okay, so in the strengths language, they're quite different. So there is the balconies and basement, which I define as the perceptions people have of you. So for someone with individualization, the basement, meaning the negative perceptions of individualization, is that this person could be biased. It could be inconsistent, could be biased, could be someone who practices favoritism, simply because they treat different people differently. So that's the that's the basement perception of individualization, right? Then the balcony perception of individualization is that the person is very bespoke, very customized, very personal, right? With each person. So you don't have a cookie cutter approach to people, right? You treat them based on who they are.
Yes.
So nobody likes to be stereotyped. I mean,
But with
I
the
say that
same, with that's a stereotype on its own.
yeah, I know.
But with the same values, because if I treat you, it's like, so I still I still treat everybody with the same warmth, no matter how much I individualize. That creates the consistency. But if I'm warm to one person and super cold to the next person, as I individualize, it might create the whole, you're biased, you're inconsistent. I can be individualizing with the consistency of the values in which I take.
So that's where we get to what we call levels of maturity, right? How do you use your individualization and how do you manage your own emotions, right? So we won't go to emotional maturity levels, but the way that we're able to self-regulate with different people. And I think that people with individualization tend to be more, how do you say, they make finer distinctions about the type of people. They relate to certain people more than other people. I mean, as humans, we all like certain people more than others. And that's part and process of being an adult, right? So I don't think we treat everybody the same. There are some people that we would just love to avoid and rightfully should avoid, to have healthy relationships with people.
We could avoid to protect ourselves, or we don't want to spend too much energy managing that person.
Right.
In order for us to feel safe.
Right.
I mean, that's my logical. This is my rational way of looking at it, right? So, okay, with strategic, right?
Yeah.
The purpose of avoiding the person, the purpose of not engaging with certain people is specific.
And since you have self-assurance, you have no problem avoiding ignoring people.
I don't know about that because I do engage most people nowadays. I do engage people who I used to avoid nowadays. Except for a couple
but that's because you're strategic and there's a purpose for you to engage these people.
I find it interesting because I find my self-assurance at basement sometimes, like last time, that got me bullied like left, right, center, right? So like my self-assurance of like, you did this wrongly or da 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 da. It just say facts as it is. It's my facts, but it's my truth, which self-assurance comes with a lot of issues with that area. And I find it interesting because, as you say, like, what would a balcony version of self-assurance look like?
You are confident in how things go out. You are able to influence and stabilize the emotions of people around you because self-assurance has very
anchoring,
very stable kind of energy with people. And I remember one of my earliest workshops that I did with someone else, right? And he's a good friend of mine. He's also a Gallup certified strengths coach. And we were doing the session together. And I was a bit, I'm not sure whether this will work. I was a bit nervous. And he says, Alex, don't worry, you got me. I'm here. Everything will be fine. I go like, okay. Suddenly I felt like everything will be fine because of the level of self-assurance he has that's able to stabilize nervous energy of other people, to assure people that things will work out fine. Because people with self-assurance tend to have that confidence that, it's okay. It's not
I just realized, as you're telling me this, so powerful.
It is.
No, is it? Yeah, no. The interesting part, I just realized for myself as well.
Okay.
It's also when you're reckless.
And I'll get, okay, so tell me more.
So me going into entrepreneurship thinking I could do it, right? Okay, so self-assurance is very often needed within entrepreneurs, I guess, to be able to just push through, right? So they're very often visionaries, but they're also kind of foolhardy.
So people with self-assurance have very strong internal sense of control, right? And very strong internal frame of reference rather than external frame of reference. So people with high self-assurance compared to other talent teams tend to have a higher propensity for risk or higher appetite and benchmark for risk. But to them, they don't necessarily see it as risk because of the internal compass that it's fine and it'll work out.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I've found many people with self-assurance seems to be coupled with learner.
Oh, interesting.
Number of them I've met, right? People with self-assurance and learner. So I always ask them, so how often do you think I'm right? I think I'm right most of the time. There was even one guy who thought that he was right all of the time, right? So it was interesting. So I asked this person, okay, so what happened when you thought you were right and then you discovered at the end it was wrong? What would you say if you did something you thought was right and then it turned out to be wrong?
Are you asking me or are you asking him?
Asking you.
Me? Oh, I'm happy to change. I'm happy to go like, oh, new information, change. I find it perfectly relieving because it's like, okay, I found new information. I mean, this whole debate as whether COVID is really that dangerous. I mean, when you look at the numbers and everything, I mean, in the early phases, I was having a bunch of questions about it. So I posted it up on Facebook. Somebody actually corrected me, so passive aggressively. But so then I just decided to do my own research, right? I want to go and learn and everything I could about it and then be strategic about, what was really happening. And only to realize, okay, COVID is definitely worse than swine flu. It's definitely worse than da. Therefore, people are genuinely worried. Are we justified in having a lockdown? Maybe, maybe not. It's still a bunch of question marks that I don't know how to answer personally as a not trained person in that particular space, right? No, even though I'm medically trained, I don't feel like I'm the expert in the area. I think this is where the self-assurance is tempered by the strategic and the learner for me.
So that's exactly it, right? Someone with self-assurance goes in very, very sure that, this is the right way against all odds until they're wrong. They get new information and then they learn from it and they say, okay, yeah, I'm wrong. So yeah, this is the new thing. And it's almost like they brush off I was wrong. Yeah, okay, yeah, I was wrong. And now I have a new direction. It's as if the being wrong had
no consequence.
Kind of. It was nothing, right? It was like Teflon coating. So my experience with people with self-assurance is like, oh yeah, I'm wrong. Then just learn from it and just move on.
Okay, so interesting thing about self-assurance, and we go back to this. I just wanted to say, once you hit a certain level, right, you need to have enough self-assurance to have hypothesis. Enough self-assurance as a person, like whether or not it's a talent team of yours. Self-assurance is very important in creating hypothesis to be able to go and test. Self-assurance is really key in being willing to experiment because it means you need to jump out of the door to try out something rather than stay inside and go like, is anything going to happen? Right? So it's interesting. And then we go back to Enneagram, right? Because I'm type 7. And then I go in with humor.
Right.
Like if I screw up, too bad. Now it's gone to the level
self-assurance right there.
Yeah. It's 7 plus self-assurance, like whatever way we want to do it. Plus an ENTP, right? I'm the challenger. So I like to poke at everything. So and DISC, I'm ID. So it's generally ID. So it's very clear for me, like my character is all about experimentation, trying things out, strategic analysis of everything. So I think in that same sense, I mean, once I put everything together, and this is not the discount strength finder, I think it's still very useful. But once you piece together all these different things, you see how the house of how everything can be done using all these different models is effective in kind of just establishing why is it that ENTP will be different from an ENTP, why a person with the same top 5 might seem very different from me. The chances of the same top 5 is very, very rare, but yeah.
It's the probability of you finding someone else with the same top 5 in the same order is 1 in 33 million. So not likely you will find someone the same top 5 in the same order. But that being said, that's what makes us unique, and that's why I love the profiling tool, right? So I think we should wrap up. I think we close to 1.5 hours already 8 minutes on the clock. So for me, my personal what I enjoyed about today's conversation was about appreciating the creating space of how we allow a youth or teenager to ideate. I think how do we relate to them both as a parent or non-parent figure, and the importance of giving them space, allowing them to experience their own without feeling like they are inferior. I think that's the word, right?
They're not equals.
Yeah. So it's important to let them feel like they're equals, right? Yeah, I think those were some of my main takeaways. Definitely going through the model was kind of information overload for me. I'm just going to keep this mural and come back to this from time to time.
We'll have conversation around it. Personally, I love these models because it gives, so I have my own crisis, you know about it. And it gives me a much clearer way of assessing where a person is, because just by their cognitive abilities in certain areas, I actually can stage a person a lot clearer. I can test the emotional ability to do cognitive things. So actually, it's interesting, right? Because now I realize how I'm actually doing it. So it's whether you can use these cognitive skills on your emotions.
In fact, there was I had no time to go into this, but as you were sharing this model of hierarchical complexity, I was thinking how we could mesh this with a talent team, right? So if I were to look at each talent team across this level of what would that look like, right? Probably an interesting area to explore, maybe some other sessions. But
I think we can do this. Okay, I can do this really quickly in like 2 minutes. I'm recognizing that it's down to so say for your empathy, right? For your empathy. So
yeah, why don't you do something that we both have, like strategic learner or individual?
Okay, strategic, right? Strategic is like I can only do computation only. I cannot generalize. Okay, it doesn't really work there, right? So okay, usually talent teams usually comes up probably only about concept level, right? So more themes and concepts. So how do I even classify things properly? Then find relationships between concepts. So like between dogs and cats, they're both animals. And then imitate sequence. So what happens is that I can do rote learning from the imitation level, which is 6, which is between 4 to 7. And what happens is that it's the same way as I can follow other people's strategy. I will look out for strategies that other people look for. I will look for what people prioritize. The things that are the most important classes in my head are the things that are strategic. Whereas a person with, like, for example, individualization, I'll look for individual traits in that manner. So it depends on how much we can classify within each of the talent team, in my opinion. So the more advanced I have, so the people who are strategic but then immature would be the people asking for all the answers but cannot, asking for whys but not able to figure out why. Like an immature strategic will always look for, okay, what's the endpoint? And then still not see the relationship between all the patterns, right? But at advanced, at a mature strategic level person, the person will start being able to do the deduction as to why this strategy was being placed, whether it's going to work, what is it that's already happening in place, are the factors coming together. That requires systematic thinking. When I was younger, I wanted knowledge. I was asking a lot of questions. I asked a lot of whys. I needed to know the concept behind it. I needed to know all the steps, but I didn't know how to use it.
Okay, so sorry. Well, while you were explaining it, again, I probably need more time to read through this and
it's quite complex,
analyze it myself. But if we were to look at strategic, for example, what came to mind was maybe it's about the level, the ability of you to use your strategic to its full impact, right? For example, when you are strategic, or rather using talent team of strategic, you're looking at different reference points so that you can identify the best way forward. You like to take in information and then plot out based on what ifs. So off the top of my head, I think since this is actually the model of hierarchical complexities, and you talk about strategic, it's about your ability to handle different degrees of complexity in the way you think. So a person who is able to think in the systematic level of complexity using strategic is probably able to analyze systems, integrate different types of systems together so that they can find the best way forward, right? So I might be exploring different.
I got something. What I noticed in a lot of the ways that you all were talking about basement and balcony, right, is that strategic is basement strategic or low maturity strategic is I'm expecting you to tell me the strategy. Because what I noticed, a lot of people with this talent teams are expecting it from reality if they are basement. That's what I noticed. It is a trait. I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but.
Okay, so again, I differentiate between balconies, basements, and raw mature. So that would be a raw form of strategic, whereby the person is not using it well. There's a need for strategic, and they're expecting someone else to meet those needs.
Okay, so it's raw versus mature, right? So then I'm wrong. It's not basement versus balcony. It's raw versus mature. So raw form. This model will explain how the raw form works.
Yep.
You're a passive user of it versus an active creator of it.
Where does it in this model tells you whether it's passive or active?
Okay, so in here, right, you're only forming proper classes and you're still receiving learning information.
So you're saying it's passive up to level
until actually abstract. So when you start being able to abstract the essence of it, you start learning how to do hypothesis to be able to strategize and extrapolate. So this model is also used for artificial intelligence to see how far you can think as an AI.
Yeah, so this deals with your level of information that you're able to deal with, right?
And be able to extrapolate the information. Raw versus mature is you're still gathering the information and expecting it from reality, to me. And mature is like where you can take minimal information, extrapolate all the different patterns that's within it to go like, okay, so I hear this and hear that, and I can see what the pattern's like.
Okay. That might actually be more in the domain of skills and knowledge rather than the talent itself. So, but I hear you. It's the degree of proficiency the person can have in the use of the talent team. So let me go back and think through this a little bit and see if we can mesh it in a more cohesive manner. It almost feels like we're trying to force feed the two right now, at least to me. So
I see some patterns within it. I think because I do lack understanding ideas and methods of strengths to that level that you have.
Yeah, and I lack the knowledge of this model that you have. So it kind of probably.
So that's why I as I'm trying all this, because I'm giving multiple factors, and the factors look different on your side. Because the factors on your side looks different from mine. So that's why we're talking about different things, because I didn't even know that skill sets, competencies, and skill sets is also another part of this. So
you need to attend one of my workshops or online trainings. So in strengths, we always differentiate between what's a talent, what's a skill, and what's a knowledge. So talent, skills, knowledge are different things, all of which the misuse or lack of would then result in weaknesses, right? Because misapplication or absence of a talent, skill, or knowledge that causes problem for yourself or other people. That's the definition of weakness that we use. And when we're able to differentiate between talent, skills, and knowledge, it actually helps us to better understand where the gap is and how do we deal with it. A person could have a particular talent team like strategic, right? The person could love to deal with big pictures, plan routes and everything, but the person doesn't have the necessary skill set in order to use it effectively, then they could actually use a talent in a very
wrong manner.
Yeah, wrong or ineffective manner, right? But take someone who has strategic, equip them with necessary skills like systems thinking, mind mapping, and things like that. So these are all skills and knowledge. But the person with strategic can take these skills and knowledge, and then you get a huge multiplier effect in terms of how effective you use these tools to achieve an outcome.
I think it's really interesting because I feel like systems thinking is either you have it or you don't.
You can
I don't
learn.
find that I don't find it a skill set because teaching skill set, teaching system thinking or design thinking, you start realizing a lot of people cannot do it even if they follow the process because there are certain traits that you need to have in terms of maturity, cognitive maturity, in order for you to utilize the skills. So talking about why agile systems don't work very well in Asia is because of that reason.
Right. So that's why systems thinking as a subject, or rather academic subject, belongs in the domain of skills and knowledge, right? So there is a certain model of which we can do systems thinking and to help people to think it. But if you don't naturally have a certain talent, natural recurring pattern of thinking, feeling, or behaving that can help you to utilize this, then there's a mismatch between your talent and your skills and knowledge, and therefore your outcome isn't optimal. So it's the same thing like asking a fish to climb a tree.
Okay, so you can teach a fish to climb a tree, but the fish might not be ever able to climb a tree properly.
Yeah, so it's Einstein's quote, right? Everyone's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. Yep. So in the same way, if you don't have a certain talent or certain way of thinking, while you can learn the skills and knowledge, it doesn't make you masterful at it, right? It's like if I had no, okay, I'm not going to use the music analogy with you anymore. If I was terrible with
table tennis, let's go.
Yeah, table tennis, some skill, right? I could spend a lot of time. I could learn the steps, but I may not have the reflexes, and there could be a certain limit to how much I can train my reflex to be good at it, right? So we're talking about talent versus learning the skill and knowledge. The skills are basically the basic steps of that you can take to achieve the task. But once you have talent, it actually helps you to amplify the effectiveness of the skills and knowledge. Or rather, the skills and knowledge helps you to bring out the full potential of your talents, right? To use them better. So this kind of why it's important to differentiate between what's a talent, what's a skill, what's knowledge, so that we can then develop it into strengths. So that's all strength talk, right? And with that understanding, I'm trying to pull this model of hierarchical complexity and see how does that relate to.
I'm trying to see. Okay, so you know what's really interesting here is that okay, like how discipline, okay, is super low for me in certain team, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to things that I love, I'm super disciplined. What does that mean?
But that's not what the talent team
means. Of course, right? I know what it means. But I know what you mean by that. Like, but I can pick up traits of the talent team of discipline.
And that would likely come from some of the other talent teams that you do have.
Okay, so that's interesting, right? So that's exactly what I was trying to refer to, because my empathy is low, but I'm effectively very empathetic to most people.
I forgot what your other talent teams are, but
communication, activator. Okay. I think my strategic is very important. My self-assurance is very important, you know.
So I think for you, a couple of things. One is you are very unfazed by people's emotions, or you can be very unfazed by people's emotions, probably because of self-assurance. So you're therefore very good at holding space. And the holding space part can come across as empathy. You have learner, and you have a lot of training in this area in terms of people, psychology, and working with people, and that also adds to the way that you're trained to listen. You know? So like now we're doing the Dakota listening trainings, right? Whereby you teach a skill of reflecting, you teach a skill of summarizing. So as a keen learner, you actually do adopt a good number of these skills that can again come across as empathy, right? I suppose the question then is for you, whether the empathy you are projecting to people, it's a learned skill because of learner and your ability to hold space,
Mhm.
or is it innate, right? Are you naturally interested in how people feel?
I'm naturally interested in how people feel.
Okay. Individualization? Are you more
Maybe.
interested in how they feel, or are you more interested in how they think?
To me, they're the same now. So I think that might be also why, because I'm starting to see it all as a system, right? So that is also because of my ideation, my system, strategic, and my learner all in the same space, where the eagerness to understand the person is
So
not to resonate with the emotions.
I suppose the question is it more intuitive or is it more analytical?
It's a very interesting question, right? Because intuition and okay, so my analysis is intuitive. So
Dude, sometimes I hate talking to you.
no, I'm saying this on the grounds of because a lot of things can be trained as second nature.
Okay, so let me explain to you how empathy works for me, right?
Yeah,
There
go.
are other times where I'm able to intuit what a person is feeling without being able to explain why. And then, of course, then I start to analyze and explore. But it makes me very intuitive about what a person is feeling or thinking, as opposed to, oh, this person used to do this. In the past, he did this, and if I analyze, and then I come to a conclusion. So we could come to the same conclusion, but the process that we get there is very different.
My one is completely unconscious nowadays, man. Like it just comes out like that. Like I feel a feeling, and I was like, is it me? Okay, no, it's that person. Okay, cool. Why? I'm feeling this. Is that what you're feeling?
Okay, that actually sounds pretty much like empathy. So
yeah, confusing for me.
I don't know where that's coming from for you, but okay, we can explore that further. Or you I don't know, maybe you have just developed a certain skill set to a level of unconscious competence.
Okay, it could be, right? So if just as a challenge, just as an interesting way of looking at it, right? Strengths finder, if you look at everything as unconscious competence and it's something you inherit from your family or from learned behaviors and everything, the order is just really due to your traumas and your upbringing and your patterns. And actually you can learn to bring all of them up. What if?
Potentially yes, but I think you could lead more of it to a certain degree of maturity, but more often than not, as with excuse me, neural pathways, you do have some which are have stronger connections than other
Neural
neural
pathways,
pathways.
then it's by training already. Like neural pathways are, unless you're talking about specific lacking genes, that's a different story. Most of this should be able to be trained.
Well, let's explore. My experience has been not most people tend to dominantly have 10 to 12, right? That's also what Gallup in their research talk about when we talk about dominant talent teams.
So maybe I'm the weirdo. So using me as an example doesn't work.
No, what's your bottom?
Consistency. Still remember my bottom is consistency for sure. Give me a second. I just pull it out again. I have my Gallup excess.
So the idea about consistent strengths is also to recognize what you're not so that you can let it go, right? So consistency is about fairness and policies and treating everybody the same.
So right now is you realize I've already been developing a model of equity and what is fairness and what is everything as well personally. I don't care about it.
Okay, but it's not the most important to you, right? For you, probably whatever is in your top, because this is essentially the order of what's important to you and what's not you.
Yep. I find it interesting. Like, let me just pull out. Sorry, it's taking a while. You cannot see because the virtual background. Let me tell you my bottom five.
Just give me your bottom three.
Bottom three, yeah. Harmony, discipline, and consistency.
Well, do you like structure and doing the same thing day in, day out every day?
Answer is no. There's discipline?
Yeah. Okay. Discipline loves that.
I have certain routines that I love.
Where your routines involve change?
No. Same routines over and over again.
same place, same time, same person, same activity, same behavior?
Used to, not so much anymore.
Okay. So
Okay, then how many consistency?
so consistency and discipline are the two more that favors sameness, right? That favors routine.
Status quo. The love for status quo.
Yeah, love for status quo, but also something structured, something agreed, something pre-planned. Discipline, people discipline, love order and structure and plans and schedules.
Okay, I am
So,
quite an anarchist.
so if you say went on a holiday, would you plan everything out and follow a plan?
No.
Okay, that's what a disciplined person would enjoy. They would plan very likely from the start to the end, from the time they get off the airport, from what time to travel what, to go where, at what time to be where, and that's probably something they enjoy.
Yeah, whereas like so the other interesting thing is like deliberative and includer, and restorative. So it's very interesting, right? Because I think you're right. Maybe, yeah, this is as you're telling me this, I'm starting to recognize, okay, cool. Because consistency to me is a personal thing, but then you say that it's how people view you as well, how consistent you are with everybody.
It's about, so people of consistency probably like, if I buy a Christmas present, I will either buy the same present for everyone or minimally this pay the same
Price.
same price for everyone.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me. Cool.
So awesome. So when you
And I'm also adding in restorative and deliberative, but yeah, go on.
yeah, so there's the nuancing in Clifton Strengths that tells us about our recurring patterns. And if it's the bottom for you, chances are it's not you, right? It's not about, like you just said, it doesn't work for you, right? To buy everyone the same present or have the same cost or whatever, which is a lot more natural for someone with consistency because that's their natural pattern of thinking, feeling, or behaving.
Again, I find this more of like related to traumas and thought processes. But hey, but that might be where it's coming from because that's where you're surveying a bunch of people and you see these patterns within it.
Yeah, I mean, could very well be from trauma that creates personality, right? So, I mean, even if you look at Enneagram, personality is based on dysfunctions.
Yeah.
Right? That's the basis of the entire Enneagram model, from what I understand, right? So your personality is based on a particular dysfunction that you have that creates personality, of which once you resolve all the personality, then everyone gravitates towards that perfection, right?
Sameness.
So the sameness is like if nobody had dysfunctions or lack or disconnect in their lives, then we would have no personality.
I don't think it's possible. Yeah, but you're going.
But that's the thing, right? It's the dysfunctions, it's all dysfunctions or disconnect that creates the personalities that we see. So if people had no dysfunctions, by definition, we were all perfect. Then I think like what we spoke about the last time, if everyone was perfect, then we'll all be the same.
Yes.
And then there'll be no personalities. Anyway, so we're going way beyond the topic of conversation.
Teenagers. So no, it's great. Like for me, it's now I'm learning from you
about strengths. So maybe we could have a different session on strengths, and we should work together on that. And yeah, so we 1 hour 45 minutes into this call, and how should we wrap this up? I mean,
just as a general, right? I think let's just look at the needs of a person, right? Like just go back down to here where in the lower one. Let's just go a bit further. Sorry. Yep. How do I move this back here? Yep. Great. Teenager, because it. Right. So when we look at this, we go back to the fact that majority of people actually are experiencing. Majority of teenagers are trying to find their individuation. They're trying to find their specialty. They're trying to find role models. They're trying to find all these kind of different things. If you're not the role model, it's not your fault, especially if you're a parent. Because they're going to go against you. They're going to look for new role models because they need comparison points. They will rebel because they need to rebel to find their own identity, and being open to them and letting them explore their own space is really key. Your main role as a parent is to be able to support them. Your main role as a non-parent adult is to be able to validate them and see them as peers.
Mm.
And so if you want to talk to a teenager, you need to really focus on that. And then we go back to here, right? Like when we talk about levels of maturity. So they are differentiating, they're trying to feel that they are respected by the community. They need to be mastering their own things. Yeah, that's really what's happening with most people. We can talk about this another time. But, and in their minds, they only look at some logics. They only can look at some logics. They will not be super empathetic, and they cannot take multiple opinions at the same time, unless you allow them to finish their own current opinions.
We'll have more conversations on that. But yeah, I hear you. I'm just running through my own experiences with youth and teenagers.
One of my favorite word that they use is called egocentrism. My opinion is everything. I can disagree with you and you're wrong, right? Whereas there's the adult version, which is I can disagree with you and you might be right. In fact, the reality might be both of our opinions, but this is what I prefer.
Yeah, or maybe there isn't even a right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of preference.
Yeah.
Or matter of perspective. It's just like I saw this comic of two people on opposite ends of a figure. One saying it's a 9, one saying it's a 6.
Yep.
So just a matter of perspective, right? They're both right.
Yep. But the teenager will tell you, no, I'm right. Yes, you can have your opinion, but you're wrong.
That almost sounds like some parents.
How many parents get past teenagehood?
Right. Okay, so I guess with that, we're going to wrap up for the session for today. So thanks for
joining us today. If you are, I don't know if anybody joined us today, but it's okay.
I saw a couple of people, but no one's kind of online now. I think that's fine. So for those of you who do catch up on this later, thanks for staying through the 1 hour 45 minutes as we talked about different things. And drop us some comments or message if you like. If you're dealing with a teenager and you like some expert opinion from Ethan.
I'm not an expert opinion. I'm just telling you how they think. There are other experts who are like great parents who can share with you more information. But all I can do is just help you figure out how they think.
Yeah. And if you like to talk about the talent teams of your own talent teams or your teenagers' talent teams, then we can have that level of conversation as well. Right. So thanks everyone for joining us. I think we will end here for today.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Thanks everyone. I'm going to stop now. Bye.